Not even. All right. I think it's live.
Yeah, top
It's
left.
recording. There's the recording button. James, take it away. Lead us off here.
Cool. All right. What's going on, everybody? I'm so glad that everyone in the future will be able to join us because this is being recorded right now. Bree and I, as you guys know, have been doing some Instagram lives and trying to breaking into this whole kind of podcast, video recording, interviewing, conversation type thing. And today we have our first and very special guest, Lucy Hendricks.
Yes. Hi.
So Lucy's awesome. I personally met Lucy for the first time last year in Costa Rica at the Beginner's Mind Retreat, and it was a completely different style of coaching, different way of thinking, different methodologies of things that I've done in my entire career as a strength coach. I mean, I was coming from a place where, we're just focusing on putting weight on a bar and making sure that the movements look good, but not really thinking very much further along those lines if people are really feeling the things that they need to be feeling, or if they're really moving in a safe way besides it just looking super good. So a lot of what Lucy did and a lot of what she was talking about kind of changed my perspective. So since last year up until now, I've been trying to find some ways to implement these different types of coaching mechanisms, different movements, different breathing mechanics into my personal training and also with my clients. And it's been looking really, really, really good. So I wanted to be able to share, and Bree and I both wanted to be able to share her expertise with you guys as best as possible. So we're going to be going after quite a few different points for today. And then we're going to see where this conversation takes us, because as we know, we can definitely go off on tangents quite often. So that's kind of the fun part about this. So why don't you kind of take it away, Lucy, and give us a little bit of a rundown of what you do.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me on. I live in Lexington, Kentucky, and own a gym where I train a lot of the general population clients. A lot of them have chronic pain or autoimmune disease or just really stressful lives where the gym is not their top priority, or even a priority at all. But we make training an experience that lets them enjoy lifting. So I kind of joke and tell my business partner all the time that a lot of our clients would probably much rather be home drinking wine with their spouse or smoking a joint, but yet here they are consistently twice a week, all the time. So it's amazing to get those types of people that would never love training to love training.
That's super impressive. And right there, I mean, like a lot of us from just in the gym world are so used to people just coming to us already wanting to train and maybe having some experience in the past. So that kind of expertise is something that I think people don't really think about and take for granted a little bit. Being able to take an individual who doesn't really enjoy training, probably doesn't move very well, has been in pain for a number of years, and getting them to enjoy movement and wanting to do more is super impressive.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and I think a lot of those people are underserved in the industry because we struggle meeting them where they're at. Not just people in pain, just the deconditioned population in general, like the couch potatoes, the people who've never lifted before. I think a lot of trainers really struggle meeting that person. So we have a lot of people out there that are not training because they're underserved.
Yeah, that's such an important point, because when we think about statistically how many people there are to serve, it really does seem like that middle part of population, people who maybe have a little bit of experience in the gym, who know they need to go to the gym and will go and they'll do kind of random programs. That seems to be the population that most coaches, trainers really target, because it is a little bit of an easier population. But statistically, how many people are there who have maybe stepped foot in a gym a handful of times but just hate it, or really are so uncomfortable that they spend most of their lives after work, doing the wine, doing the TV, which, like, not hating on it over here, but it's such a beautiful thing to make that your target demographic, because those people, we know that just getting in the gym 2 times a week, even what it does to the human body is just so profound. And that just makes me really excited. So just like James, I met Lucy last year in Costa Rica as well. And Lucy, I think I've told so many people this story. I'm not even sure if I've told you this, but I think I said it on a podcast even a few weeks ago about how your first presentation you started coaching, I literally was just like, my damn, this girl knows how to coach. Because like, it's so cool to see someone so skilled in engaging an audience and giving really clear directions and getting a person to move the way you want to. And I've always loved that aspect of coaching. So I literally was like immediate lady crush. and she's talking about breathing, which is so unsexy, but really cool to me because I started kind of looking into personal practices of breathwork myself a few years ago. And I think my first exposure was through like Mark Divine of Seal Fit and like the box breathing stuff. And then learning the, incorporation with the nervous system. And I just was so geeked out on it. So you're kind of my go-to person for even some of my clients that I send drills to. And so I'm really excited to see if we can get more of your experience in helping explain breathing and applying it to people. And for people that are just watching, they're just like, oh my God, it's so annoying to hear all these people who think they know what they're talking about, talk about how important breathing is, which is, I feel like a lot of us, why they should care. What are some common pitfalls that we see and maybe why it's so hard to get into it, and then see if we can also kind of steal from your brain, like, all right, now what, and how to get started. So this is gonna be a fun combo. I'm probably gonna be sending this to literally everyone.
That's awesome. Well, my coaching skills is basically what saved my career because I was a personal trainer who could barely talk. And I remember my employer like, you need to build an alter ego or something.
Oh my gosh.
You're supposed to teach classes and no one can hear you. And I still have clients that were there day one. So I love taking the interns. And they're like, Ryan, tell them how much I sucked. He's like, oh, you couldn't hear a word. You couldn't hear a word you would say, like nothing. So they've really seen me grow up when I was like 19, 20. But my coaching, my attention to detail, I think is what saved everything. So even though nothing but awkwardness came out of my mouth, I produced results by the coaching component.
That's so cool. So where would you start? Where do you think it is a really important place to kind of get people on the same page when we start having this conversation about breath work, breathing, everything?
Yeah, I would say that would start with like changing our beliefs around breathing, and then changing the beliefs around breathing, and then changing like why we do it and the understanding of why it works.
Yeah.
And why we should implement it into our training. So I've been pushing breathing and my love for breathing for almost a decade. It was before I was even certified. Do you all know who Mike Robertson is?
Sounds super familiar, but I don't think I know off the top of my head.
Crazy. That's like never happened.
Yeah.
You must be
talk about how I literally don't know anyone.
So back then he was the corrective exercise expert, and that's who, like him and Bill Hartman, Zach Couples like dad, basically, they both own iFast.
Okay.
So one of the most popular gyms in the industry. And I saw him when I was 19 at a conference. It was before I was certified, and he talked about all this like breathing stuff.
Yeah.
So I fell in love with it because at the time my idea of breathing was if you fix someone's breathing, then you're fixing someone's movement dysfunction. That's what I thought. So if you think you have the solution for people's movement dysfunction, like you're going to want to push it on everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always been a pusher, like obsessively pushing things.
I push people.
I do. Like I find something and then I want everybody to experience it.
Right.
Like in middle school, have you ever watched the movie Blood Diamond?
Yeah.
Oh, ages.
Like diamonds are made and you'll never want to buy a diamond.
Yeah,
like I had my friends into thinking that we were going to have a fun sleepover, but I made all my friends watch it and they're like, do you understand why you don't want to buy diamonds? Like that's how much I end up caring about
You're
things.
that kind of friend. Oh, okay. I see what you mean. There you go.
So I ended up caring about breathing, and I wanted everybody to care about it. I wanted all my clients to care about it. And I worked at a place where it was part of the program, but my employers kind of set me up for failure with this new obsession, not on purpose, but they had already made breathing as this like separate entity of training and working out. Like it was already this separate thing. So it wasn't like blended into training. They had gained a ton of trust with their clients. So clients never wanted to do it. But since they loved the coaches, like, okay, I'll get down on the floor and do it. And it was almost like this play of like forcing you to eat your vegetables. And you get mad at your dad and mom, but you don't hate your mom and dad. You still eat your vegetables. So that's kind of the culture that they painted around breathing. And it was, if you do breathing, it's for people in pain. Weak people do it. Strong people don't have to do it. So if you wanted to lift heavy, you probably don't want to do the 90-90. And that was a culture that they had already painted on that, not on purpose, mostly from the lack of understanding of what they were doing. And I think too, the fact that the pioneers in this industry on this way of seeing the body were a lot of physical therapists.
Right.
Like these were like the ones that were really pushing this or exploring this and teaching about this, which pushed the idea that getting into this wasn't a personal trainer's job. That if you put an emphasis on this, you're now doing rehab. And that's only for broken people. So therefore, not your job, only the PT's job, which that idea comes from the lack of understanding of pain from the personal trainer and the PT.
Sure, which is its own complex kind of conversation, but that we kind of change it right now. That's so cool, and such a cool way we're having conversations about that now.
100%, which I'm really glad. But the reality is personal trainers and physical therapists can have skill sets that are similar.
Right.
And the skill set that I'm talking about is coaching movement and assessing movement. And that's all this is. Like, so breathing, if you appreciate breathing, you just appreciate how breathing affects movement. So it doesn't mean that you just care about breathing and now you're a rehab expert.
Right.
Just look at movement with the appreciation that breathing affects movement. So it's no different than seeing someone's ability to extend their hip, and it's no different than coaching an exercise that increases hip extension. Like if you see that someone is struggling getting an exhaled position, you can coach someone to get into an exhaled position. Glute bridge, hip extension, like it's the same thing. So changing our beliefs around it can change people's views on it. So now they don't see it as this rehab thing. They just see it as movement.
I think that's really good, because I feel like in the industry, especially with like the plethora of certifications and courses that people can do, everyone wants to kind of find their niche of things that they're known for, right? So I feel like that's where that disparity comes from as well, is that if you're someone who looks at movement and does specific movement correction dysfunctional work, I feel like people feel, you gotta funnel yourself into just that zone, and then that's all you're gonna do is just rehab and movement work, where it's not the only thing that you can do. You can have this tool in your tool belt to just help people move better, and then progress them along this continuum of health, essentially, and fitness. But I just want to touch on one thing that you said when you were talking about like the changing beliefs and everything that you started with the breath work, and then what it turned out to be afterwards. Just for people who don't kind of have an understanding and are just thinking about this in terms of like, oh, I breathe all the time. I don't understand
literally
it.
That was my first pushback when I started doing breath work. Yes, go James, take it.
Like, oh yeah, I love.
I know how to breathe.
Be alive. Like what kind? Like what do you love about it? So just differentiating between that, because I know this on the back end, because I read your blog post about belly breathing, and that was phenomenal. Because I love that stuff when you get down to it and you tell people like, listen, the views that you had in the past are wrong, like plain and simple. Like this is why, and this is the evidence, and let's talk about it. So can you get into details a little bit more on that?
Yeah. Trying to think of like how you're asking, like my beliefs of how they change from the beginning to right now, or just beliefs of what do you mean my breathing can be changed?
So just to clarify, your beliefs on why, so from where you started, a lot of the breathing work that you guys were doing, like you said at the gym you were at, was not so much to do with like people who used to lift heavy, was really on the movement dysfunction side, right?
Yes. And then that was coming from the belief that people's posture was driving like pain and dysfunction. Yeah. And then so therefore, if I did a 90-90 with someone and their back pain went away, I thought, okay, well, their posture caused them back pain, and I just fixed their posture with breathing. And then that was a mentality that I was thinking back then. And I think a lot of people think that, and still people think that. But my understanding of why that might have worked has completely changed, which is my understanding on pain and all the things that influence pain. And just because someone felt better after 90-90, it doesn't mean that it was their posture. It could be so many things. It could be that for the first time they felt safe in their body to move, and now they had less pain. Or it was that for the first time ever. They moved for the first time in 2 years, and they finally got some blood flow in that area, and that decreased their pain. Like, it could be so many things. It could be someone's expectation because their friend that referred them had less pain after training with us, so they were expecting to feel less pain. So beliefs in that way. But what you said about, well, I just breathe just fine. When we talk, because breathing, you want to start seeing breathing as like just incorporated in your body as movement. So in order for you to move around, you need to be able to move things in your body. Oh, I can finally talk about this, and there's a visual. This is really hard when it's just a podcast.
Yeah, go for it. Let's do it.
Yeah.
Let's set ourselves apart.
I use my body because I try to don't talk with your body. So when it comes to movement, you're basically like a big bag of water inside, because we don't have empty spaces in our body. Like, everything is like, there's something everywhere, with whether it's tissues, organs, ligaments, nerves, like fat, skin. There's something occupying every single parts of our body. So in order for us to move around, we need to be able to manage everything that's inside of us. And that's not just bones and muscles. So in order for me to move, I need to be able to push things inside of me, which is more than just the ligaments and bones and joints. It also is air and the organs. So those things need to be able to move around. So if I were to do a big back bend, where do I need to push everything into?
Got to push everything forward, essentially.
Yeah, I need to be able to push everything forward. So I don't just have to be able to contract my low back muscles and then stretch my front muscles. I need to also be able to move my rib cage forward, which means I need to be able to inhale, expand. If I can't expand in parts of my rib cage, I'm going to be able to have I'm going to have some movement limitations. And then vice versa, if I bend over and touch my toes, where does everything need to push back to?
Needs to go back.
Yeah. Now we're looking at that compression as opposed to expansion.
Yeah, exactly. And if there are parts of your rib cage that you can't expand on the backside, you might have some limitations in certain motions. And the same goes for every other range of motion that you're checking, like shoulder motion. If there's parts of your rib cage that can't expand, we can make assumptions that certain movements are going to be limited. So when you look at breathing, you're just seeing how it influences movement. So when I test people on the table, when I'm testing ranges of motion, I'm testing conventional tests. I'm checking to see someone's ability to flex their hip. I'm checking someone's ability to extend their hip, flex their shoulder. The only thing that makes me a little more unique than some people is I'm also seeing how breathing affects what I'm checking on the table.
Yeah.
And that's one of them. It's like, if you can't flex and touch your toes, I'm thinking, where can't you breathe into? Where can't you expand, and where can't you compress?
Right. And I think that for everybody watching, it's just like any other field. There are these terms that become so familiar to us. And so for people just getting into breathing, sounds really obvious. It feels very obvious as soon as you think about it, but like expansion and compression, those are two kind of breathing world terms, right? And it's as simple as, like, for anyone watching, like, expanding, right, is just what you said. It's like the rib cage being able to expand, right? And then compressing is here. And I think that when I was first getting to know these definitions, right, yes, it made sense when I thought about it, but they're also used really often in terms of, like, for the expansion, being able to open, the back, right? For the compression, being able to, like, shift it back. And I think that can be really helpful to kind of get on the same page for everybody watching. And then you mentioned, kind of made me think about buy-in for people, right? And why this matters and how it applies to the people that are like, I don't notice any difference and I feel fine and I don't have pain. I love doing a front rack drill with people. So people who are used to, like, maybe front squatting and who have difficulty with getting the elbows up. And back in the old CrossFit days, we'd be like, oh, mash your lats, bro. And, like,
grab that band, just let it pull back.
It's like external rotation with the band and the PVC and everything. And it's so funny now being equipped with a lot of the tools that, I've learned in the past couple of years, and specifically with Lucy, I'll get people just to get into that compression, right? Let it exhale and compress. And then it's like, Oh, you mean it literally just had to do with being able to move what you just said, like kind of a bag of water is such a cool analogy. Oh, I just needed to know how to move my body within my body to create that range. And a lot of times that's like, that is such a cool concept, I think, for me and for a lot of people that are just like, why should this affect me?
Yeah, and this is the idea, and the bag of water is from Bill Hartman, but this is where people need to start thinking. And I know we're jumping to like the last part, but like I'm really good at showing people the big picture.
Yeah.
And like this is what I show a brand new trainer. I'm like, where does everything have to go? Okay, everything has to go to the front. Now everything has to go to the back. It's like start getting wrap your head around the idea of how to coach movement by seeing it that way. So if someone's on all fours and they're really flat in certain parts of the rib cage, like where do you think they can't get air in? How can you coach them so that looks smoother? And just like start getting wrap your head around that, because it does get more complicated. But I think I know the problem is you start to listen to other people who are way beyond this thought process, because the rib cage can be broken down into many different areas. Some places can inhale, other places can exhale, other places can't exhale. Like there's so many differences and different compensations that people can have. But if you don't start by just coaching it and getting your like big picture first, you're never going to understand the people who seem smarter than you, but they probably don't even understand it either. They're just talking about it.
Just so much. Yeah. And I think that's where you get lost in the complexity, because I think that maybe is probably one of the most valuable things that you can give us insight into, because you've been doing this so long. You know, really, why should people get bought into this? Like why, and maybe following that up with like why they still kind of get struggle with it, which might just be the complexity thing.
Okay. Let's talk trainer perspective of like why trainers should buy into this.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when you appreciate breathing and you're looking at movement, if you are able to get clients access to ranges of motion that they may not have, like being able to touch their toes or being able to get their arms overhead, then that also comes with benefits when it comes to the training floor.
Sure.
So for you to be able to get your arm overhead without shrugging or arching your back, you need to be able to expand your rib cage from front to back. So you need to be able to expand from your chest and your upper back to be able to get your arm overhead. If you can't do that, then you're probably going to have some movement limitations to be able to do that. So if you can maximize your client's ability to expand and compress the rib cage, then you're going to be able to unlock a lot of motion that they don't have. Coaching becomes so much easier because people can do everything you're asking them to do. If someone can't,
you're saying this is without taking my hand in a band and just kind of like yanking.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure, like,
yeah. And
amazing.
And if you want to separate yourself from, let's say physical therapists and personal trainers and how they can use the breathing tool differently. I think personal trainers have like a really good opportunity to address everything. So physical therapists, like when I see Zach work and he's assessing someone and he's getting very individual of where they lack motion and where they need to restore it, he is like getting really individual depending on what he's finding on the assessment. For personal trainers, you can almost just address everything. One, because you have so much time with them. A PT only has so many sessions, so they really need to hone in on what that person needs and what they don't have and restore what they don't have. Personal trainers, like you can restore everything. You can restore hip flexion, hip extension, shoulder flexion, posterior expansion. Like you can restore everything because you have them for so long. And that doesn't look like weird breathing exercises. They just look like regular strength training exercises. A good split squat, a good squat, a good glute bridge, a good overhead, a good press, a good pull. It's just all the exercises that you're already doing, just establish a good position when it comes to breathing.
I think that's the most exciting part, is that this isn't a squat thing here, contralateral. It's not like all of these things that when you do them might not be quite as complicated, but feel very unapproachable, especially when we're talking about just getting people moving. It just comes down to the same basic movements that we know work, that stand the test of time, but understanding maybe how to place your body and just kind of orient it a little bit better, right? That's kind of what you're saying.
I think that's
100%.
So cool.
I think it's really good, and that you differentiated between, like, now we're starting on the personal training side, because my question would always be, all right, so as a trainer or as a coach, you want to be able to understand all these things and why you're doing them. But on the client side of things, I don't know if you personally do this, but do you also want your clients to understand these concepts too, so they can continuously see progress? Or is it mostly relying on your coaching to get them to continuously be able to, if they get a new range of motion, to be able to keep that range of motion?
Awesome question, because I really wanted to talk about this. It's how the language towards clients is huge.
Yeah.
So back in the day when I still believed in the word movement dysfunction, the way you explain
Cross
this,
that out.
yeah, the way you explain this to clients, or the way I would explain it is, you need to build a foundation. You need to learn the basics. You need to work on your posture. Like, all those words and the language used around that makes it seem like the person is now broken, and the person is now weak or dysfunctional.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And I take people through almost 2-hour warm-ups right now, just because it helps me so much from a semi-private setting. People come in and they do 90-90, quadruped, and then arm bar, and they go through that like 4 times through, and then they go through like 3 other activities that are very low level, and they go through that 3 to 4 times through, and then they might come in and do that again. But our language is not anything about building a foundation or the basics, or this posture is important, or you're going to hurt yourself, or safety. None of that. What we say is, so you're here to strength train, and we make sure that we have their end results somewhere on the success board. So if we're dealing with someone who wants to lift, I will for sure point to Mike's 300-pound deadlift. Or if I have a scared pain client, I will make sure I point out to, like, Janet just squatted for the first time without pain. So like I plan out where I'm going to point at the end result. So I'll say, so you're here for strength training. So you're going to be just like Mike, or you're going to be just like Janet. So strength training is like a skill. So any skill is going to be very new. Like the first time you learned how to drive. So our first 2 days is just you driving in the parking lot, where you're just getting used to where everything's at, how to turn, how to look without taking the car with you. So the first day you're going to come in here is just you learning the language, the lingo, the cues, because it can be really new for some people, no matter what your background is. So we find that a lot of people are way more successful and way more independent when we just give them 2 days to learn all these new things, because it is overwhelming. It is new. But don't worry, like, people get through it just like you learned how to drive. Or I'll compare it to cooking. When you go, you have to learn how to boil water first before you learn how to make all these like fancy dishes. And people understand that a little bit. And now it's less like you're fragile. It's just you're learning the cues and the lingo and the positions that everything is based on top of. I've also used salsa. Like, have you ever danced? And like, no. Well, salsa
but
apparently has like this 8-step like basic move. And as soon as you master that one, you can start learning all the more complicated things. And I don't even know if that's real. I think I Googled it. I'm like, what's the base of salsa?
That makes sense. Let me just try it for you guys too.
Yeah, let's do a look. We're gonna take a break and do some salsa first, and then we'll come back.
And then you build everything, all the more complicated moves on top of that. So you're just gonna learn that, and you're gonna suck. It's just like, give it a few weeks, because it is complicated and people get frustrated.
Yeah.
Which takes me to my next one of like, how do I get buy-in, or how do I produce the result?
Yes.
So one was the language. Like, it had nothing to do with you're going to do a warm-up or you're dysfunctional. It's all about a skill. You're learning a new skill where you learn new lingo, new cues, new position. Just like if you were to take rock climbing, it wouldn't be rare to take a 45-minute class where you're working on the foot position and the hand position. So getting that language pushed towards them. And then the other one is the really slow progress.
Right.
I used to really pride myself to get someone in a perfect 90-90 with a reach and all the cues, and they're holding on to them, and I was able to do it. but I was definitely overwhelming them.
Yeah.
And a lot of coaches do that. When I watch people who, like, I can't get people to buy in, well, let me see you do it. They run someone through, like, okay, tuck, barely have tucked. Okay, now start exhaling, now reach and full breath out, keep reaching, and then they're done. And then they retest on the table and nothing changed on the assessment, so there's no buy-in.
Mm-hmm.
By the time I reassess someone's movement, they've gone through like 35 exhales.
Yeah.
And the results are always like mind-blowing. So even if I was awkward with my words, they're like, oh my gosh, I feel better. Like,
Yeah.
It's about exposure too, right? At the end of the day, it's like the amount of times you've been exposed to this is going to probably solidify to a certain extent the results of it.
Oh, for sure. So with the slow progress is when they come in and see Dave for a strategy session, he says, I'm going to give you a taste of what you're going to do with Lucy. And he walks them through it one time, like 90-90, just a few tucks, a few exhales. And then they come in and see me for a one-on-one. And the way I introduce it is so slow. It's like, okay, so you're going to start laying on your back. So let's start with the ab component. So I don't say breathing component. I said ab. I'm like, so you're going to breathe in through your nose and you're going to fully exhale out. Exhale, exhale, keep exhaling, keep exhaling. Awesome. Do that like 6 times. Perfect. Yeah. And now I add that extra one. Okay, now you're going to do the same thing. You're going to fully exhale through your mouth, but you're going to add a pause at the end. And then so they do that. If they struggle with that, I start to like back up my cues. I'm like, okay, this person's not going to take many. And then I'm like, awesome. So we're going to do this again. But now at the end of the pause, you're going to hold on to that tension that you just felt. And before I introduced that, I made sure she was feeling that. If she wasn't feeling that, I wasn't going to add that cue. I'm like, at the end of the exhale, you feeling some abs a little bit? Yeah. I'm like, okay, cool. I'm like, next round. Okay, so that tension that you felt, keep it as you breathe in. I'm like, okay, cool. And then I just see how they do. If they fuck it up, I'm like, okay, we won't go deep into that cue. All right, now let's do the tucking component. So you're just going to roll your hips, and then they do it wrong. I'm like, perfect. So this time, I want you to just.
Great, that was awesome.
Yeah, that was really good. This time, can you roll your hips versus picking them up? I'm like, good. And then if they don't do it, I'm like, don't pick up your hips, just push your feet down. But I let them practice that a few times. And then after like 20 tucks, I'm like, hold on, don't let your hips move. 5 breaths. And by the time they do the 5 breaths, I mean, they've mastered that because they've done it 20 times.
Yeah.
Go through that 3 rounds. Then I do a reassessment. There has always been movement change.
Yeah.
Like, all the time. And so when people say I can't get buy-in, I'm not coaching it correctly.
Yeah. It's
so rush through that.
Yeah. And it seems like it's so boring. But I think that literally the only thing in my head right now, and James, you might remember this, there was this very brief moment this year in Costa Rica where Ben House, I forget what he was speaking about. It came up, I think, in Q&A. I'm not sure. But he said a comment about how coaches in the Western world we really try to remove the struggle from our clients. Do you remember that, James?
Vaguely, yeah.
He made a comment about how we're always trying to make it easier. We're trying to take away the struggle. Yeah. And I felt like he like looked into my soul in that moment. And I was just like, don't move, be cool. But it's such a funny and powerful, it had a really profound kind of, moment for me. Because it's so true. I'm always trying to kind of remove limitations for my people so that they can like get to doing the work. But at the same time, you always have to do the work. You don't get to skip the struggle. At some point you have to struggle. And I think I've done a better job in the last year, maybe 2 years of not trying to remove every limitation and managing expectations. Expectations for my clients is huge. Like I want them to know this is going to be hard. This is going to be unsexy. I kind of talk about that a lot, but I think that's the crux of the issue, right? Is that we want people to like get that excitement and that progress so badly that we forget that it doesn't come without doing unsexy, uncomfortable, boring shit sometimes.
You got to do the work. You absolutely have to do the work. And I see that all the time. And I mean, like I mostly deal with like lifters and stuff for the most part, but I know that since last year, since I started implementing some of the breathing work or some of the, just getting them into positions and having them find like the 90-90 has been amazing. For a lot of people, I haven't moved that much further past the 90-90 because they're doing so well with it. And that leads me into the question that I have to you now also. When you're working with with a client like that you were just talking about, and you have them just continuously doing these repetitions, we breathe for 20 or 30 reps, then we start getting the hip movement and all that. Do you have a graduation plan for them at all? Do you have as soon as they get past this point and you've seen them improve their movement 3 or 4 times using these methods, do you have a next step to that?
Yeah. So they see me the one-on-one. And then I tell them, okay, next time you come in, we're going to do a little more than what we did today, and you'll have your 1-day program. Okay. And then they come in and they do that, and from there they're in a semi-private setting. So I have 2 to 3 other people, but they've already done 90-90 so many times that it's so smooth. It's amazing. And they're not sitting there like, when's my workout going to start? Because the expectation was already set. And then from there, I have the freedom to say, how'd you feel after my session? Oh, great. Okay, let's add some sled today. So I can quickly add stuff. But the deconditioned population, how'd you feel after our session? I was sore for 3 days. I'm like, okay, cool. And then these are the people that people like Ben House would just completely destroy. And you talk about we want to make I love Ben, but Ben doesn't do a good job at teaching people how to train the general population.
That's not his thing, right? That's
not his thing. And
he's open about that too, which is
he doesn't serve the deconditioned population. Yeah. But we talk about just even his comment of we try to remove the struggle. Well, the deconditioned people need to remove the struggle.
To an extent, right? But they're still going to struggle is kind of the thing. Yeah. It's it's for them not to come in and be like, oh, this is going to be so easy.
Yeah. But if we think about coaches and what their background is, it's usually athletes. So we've already built our tolerance to exercise, and we've built to love the suck. We know that when our heart rates are going up and our muscles are burning, that we're not going to die. But perception is reality. And when you go through something that you've never experienced before, your body's probably going to be very threatened. And when we're dealing with the deconditioned population, it's that's what I see is I'm slowly conditioning their body to exercise by working on the tissue tolerance component. So by doing all the 90-90 and the half kneeling and the warm up, because it's not easy. Even people who are conditioned struggle. Yeah. And the way I see it is I'm conditioning their tissues slowly, because by the time that to answer your question, James, I'm actually going to start answering that one because it's going to answer this thing.
Answer whichever ones you want.
Yeah. They come in and do their warm up, and then I ask them how they felt on the scale of 1 to 10. How do you think they feel today? 10, you might not walk tomorrow. If they give me anything below a 6, the next day they come in, they have the same warm up, but it's not 4 times through anymore. It's just twice. And then they have a 1-day program. And the 1-day program is that they do every time they come in. So there's not an A day and a B day. It's usually squatting, ramp squat, iso hold, and then short seated landmine press, and then assisted step up. And the assisted step up is very similar to the squat, same position, same everything, is just single leg. And then the warm up stays the same. And then the next day they do the same thing. And then the next day they do the same thing, but I'm progressing as within that workout. They go from iso squat to squats going up and down, and then to a goblet squat. So I progress that same workout, and I've conditioned their tissues to load this position, which is the stack position, very similar to every exercise we do. It stays very consistent. And then I push them a little harder, and I've already conditioned their body to tolerate exercise a little bit.
Yeah.
I watch other people train in the gym, and I'm they probably feel they're going to die. The tolerance to exercise needs to be trained just like tissue tolerance. It needs to be a slow progress. Yeah. And your perception of sucking and I'm going to die, your body's totally going to overreact. You'll have a flare up, autoimmune flare up, who knows? So seeing it in that way of how can we meet people where they're at? Well, that's how we do it. But to answer, how do I progress people? You graduated. Yeah. If they are totally nailing it and progressing really fast, we just progress them with that program. We add weight. We make it a very novel experience of oh my gosh, you're already pressing the 17-pound weight while keeping the exercises the same.
Yeah. I was just gonna, sorry to interrupt, but I was just gonna say, because what it sounds like, I always like to relate these things to kind of my previous education when it was coming from like, Olympic weightlifting, a lot of Eastern Bloc stuff as well, and hypertrophy training, a whole bunch of things like that. And a lot of times in hypertrophy, when we're looking at just trying to get people as big as possible in bodybuilding, the methods that you use can be specific, but really what you're looking for is you're looking for total exposure to these muscle groups. And that really rings true with what you're doing here too, because you're progressing people, yes, but the tissue activation is essentially the same. So what you're doing is the exposure to the stimulus is the same. All you're doing now is you're just kind of changing these movements a little bit, and you're teaching them how to progressively load these tissues, basically.
100%.
Yeah, that's what I find really cool. It's the same kind of thing.
Yeah. And I will show that for someone who's interested in lifting, to show them the end result. It's like, look, I'm at 90-90 right now. And then I will grab like a weight that they don't think I can pick up, or like grab an 80-pound kettlebell. And I'm like, look at the same position, 90-90, and I'll do a squat.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so I'll just show them this similar stuff, like half kneeling. I'll even say, I wrote an article on True Coach of how to throw purpose into your training, like how to increase buy-in. If someone's doing half kneeling in their onboarding day for like day one, I'll say, have you ever done lunges? And if they say, yeah, I love lunges, I'm like, awesome, this is a great warm up for you. Like, oh, okay, cool. So like there I gave that exercise purpose. Okay. Or they say, no, it hurts my knee. Like, oh, does it hurt your knee right now? No. Okay, awesome. So if you can do this, you can definitely do our lunges. Notice how it's the same thing. We just have to bridge that gap. Like, oh, wow. And there I gave that exercise purpose. Finding purpose in everything to increase buy-in.
So I'm writing this down at the same time as you're talking. Yeah, no, this is exactly, honestly, this is exactly what I wanted to, the answer that I kind of was looking for. This is perfect, because I think that a lot of times what we're doing is we're struggling with trying to give our clients purpose as well. Like again, coming from a population where I don't necessarily work with heavily detrained populations. I'm working more with people who have been lifting and want to lift better or have some experience in the past. But I know that from training some people who weren't at that level, if I tell someone to do a squat, I know how it's supposed to feel, but you don't really think about the fact that your client might not be feeling that in the same way, because they just don't know how to move in that range of motion. It might look good because they're moving up and down to a certain extent, but are they really loading things appropriately? And then how to get someone from like who really enjoys squats to dial it back to some of these movements if you haven't started with it. This is a fantastic way of bridging those two things together and giving it purpose.
Yeah.
This is awesome.
So my question would be, because there have just been so many nuggets in here, so many good things, and what I hope people watching this will kind of do is, just maybe open their mind a little bit to the fact that this could be a really cool way to impact their movement, their pain, if they have pain, their perception of, this value. And then I want to make sure that people know what to do now. And, whether it's the programs that you offer, I'm not sure if they're open to people, but definitely to kind of get more resources from you. What would you say to people? Like, where do they go now? What do they do?
So if they are just getting started, or if they're like curious about breathing, I would say start with me before they start with everybody else who seems to know a lot about breathing. Because what I do is I teach people how to implement it in the training for like that. And when it's a lot easier to fail in that setting. Like if you fail to coach a tuck in your glute bridge when someone's doing a warm up, it's like totally fine. But if you fail to coach an exercise and you're assessing and retesting, you're not going to get any changes. So you're not going to get any buy-in. Right. So how to implement breathing on the training side of things and get your reps there. And that's how you'll really understand how to coach movement. Like before I ever did an assessment on the table, I think I made up a number, like I did the math. I had coached maybe 22,000 glute bridges in 2 years before I ever coached someone on a table with an assessment, because I did it with a group class.
Right.
I got my reps in. I got to see like how everybody compensated. So when it happened on the table, like I've seen this before, here's how I coach you out of it. If you don't have the reps there, like you're not going to figure out how to coach them out of that. And actually physical therapists really struggle with that. That's why some physical therapists really suck at coaching and they're not getting the results.
One-on-one. Yeah, you can learn so much from group coaching, man, if you're
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I want every trainer to start with group coaching and just get thrown into that.
Yep.
So start with me. I have a couple options. I have free content online and free blogs. I have a free mindful movement class for trainers on Sundays as long as we're locked out of my gym.
I'll be in on that one.
And what I've done there is I describe it as yoga. It's a really good way to bring awareness to your body because not only do these breathing exercises can help you get in a better position so you're a more efficient mover, but there is also so much benefit to bringing awareness to your body. So even if you're a heavy lifter and you're not in pain and you love to work out, slowing down and paying attention is also very important,
right.
Especially for fitness professionals where their escape and their only way of being present is training. Mm-hmm. But if that gets taken away, like they need to find other ways to be present. So with the mindful movement, I designed basically just a movement routine that people can join in. And I believe that people learn by doing. So if you want to do it with your clients, you have to take the classes. You understand what it's like. And you'll see with my language, I get people to really hone in on their body and pay attention to their body without inducing a fragile mindset.
Right.
I'm not saying like this is a binary thing, a right or wrong. I'm just saying you're training your brain to pay attention. You're training yourself to coordinate your body. So just the language allows people to become present without being fragile.
Oh, that's so awesome.
And then the next step would be Zach's course.
Oh yeah. Okay. So your Instagram is, and we'll try and like write it or put it, of course, in info, but what's your Instagram?
Lucy_Hendricks.
Okay. And then your website?
CoachLucyHendricks.com.
Easy. And then Zach's website?
ZachCouples.com.
Okay, yeah, ZACcouples.com. Perfect.
And he has a free course, Breathing Made Easy. It's like his pre-course material, so I would go to that to get the anatomy.
Cool. So then we'll make sure to share all of these resources because if even a handful of people are like, okay, cool, now I actually know kind of how to dig into this. I can see how this would impact me. Personally, for me,
yeah.
Super, super quick. But I mean, I mid-20s was like, all right, well, this is done for me. Like I've damaged my body, gymnastics and CrossFit. This is just it for me. And I just won't ever lift heavy again. And it really took good programming by Ryan LaCure. And then this adjustment of my belief system around what my body can endure and getting out of that fragile mindset to start seeing pain as just information and not as like, oh, it's an injury and now I've hurt myself again. And it's really incredible to be 31 and lifting heavy regularly and it feeling great. It's a very cool thing. So it's pretty profound for me. And I know that that's an experience that we see a lot when people learn how to kind of take this whole incorporated look at stuff. So it's just so stoked that you would do this with us, Lucy. Thank you for coming.
This has been absolutely awesome. And I think that like for the most part, what I was really looking forward to is that, you know, behind the curtain coach aspect to it. And like, how can we really frame this for our clients as best as possible without creating that mindset of fragility either? So I think you did a fantastic job at that because it's so hard to talk about helping people, you know, move better or get out of pain without mentioning moving better or pain at all, right? So that's a fantastic resource, and I think that this is going to be a really big help if there's clients that are watching, people who don't work in the industry that want to get more into this. I think the mindful movement is going to be a fantastic tool for them too, I imagine. And then for other coaches, the rest of this is going to be just wonders and opening up doors and kind of talking to your clients about breathing and helping people essentially just move and lift and feel better without having them actually think that there was anything wrong with them in the first place. Because there really isn't. It's just about just compensations for different things, morphology. It can be a whole bunch of different reasons that we might not fully understand. And we don't necessarily have to dig into either. We just have to make sure that they're better than they were.
Yeah. And then if you really understand this, you can, and it doesn't have to be my mindful movement, you're able to provide a service that helps you adapt to the client's needs, because unfortunately we can't control everything in our clients' lives. Like I can't control their financial situation, their relationships, their kids' schedules, people dying, becoming caretakers. So there's so much I can't control that sometimes clients can't train.
Right.
And you're able to bring it down and bring the intensity down, but then also still provide a really good experience. Like you can be a trainer on the good days and the bad days, because the truth is, like, we're all going through a crisis right now. We have to adapt to our clients, but people go through a personal crisis all the time. And if you could give that service to them and bring it down and provide something more restorative, they stick around a lot longer and they don't cancel their sessions.
Yeah, that's a good nugget to end on there. Boom.
Yeah, you keep them moving. It's like just
Yes.
keep them moving. Just continue to keep them moving.
Yeah.
That's the big thing.
Yeah.
That's great. Listen, Lucy, thank you so much for jumping on with us. I'm going to turn these little things, like I said, into some snippets of information and little knowledge bombs that we can drop for everyone out, that we can share over social media. We can hopefully do this again later on with more questions that people are going to send in to us, that maybe we can even tackle some specific cases as well, hopefully at a later date. But thank you so much for jumping on here with us. We really appreciate it, and appreciate you, because quarantine hasn't been easy on everybody. And it's nice to see other faces, even if it's just through a computer screen and webcam. So this has been absolutely awesome. Thank you so much for being here.
Yay.
Thanks for having me on.
Thank you, James. See you guys next time.
Yes. And this.